And we are back. How We Work is back for episode number 5. Yeah, episode number 5. I believe we are live. Let's see, do we have some? Yeah, we have participants here. So welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Super happy to be here today with our 5th installment of How We Work. First thing is thank you to everybody that's here or anybody that's taking the time to watch this later. More now than ever, we have a lot of places we can be at any given time, and your time is valuable, and that you're choosing to spend an hour with these conversations and with us is important. And I know everybody at Culture Amp, everybody here really appreciates you choosing that, and we honor that. So thank you. Just to, if you haven't seen this before, this is part of the Working Through It series that we're doing at Culture Amp, which is a 7-part series around kind of how we navigate through change. We started this probably about 6 weeks ago. We have a few more episodes. We're doing them every 2 weeks. Lots of content. This is a piece of the content, resources, articles, content to move through. We have, up to this point, we started with impact, the impact of it, which was we looked at through the lens of well-being. Then we moved into denial, and we talked about leadership and how leadership can support us as we go through this from denial, uncertainty, looking at employment, and then facing turmoil, we used emotional intelligence. So today is around experimentation and trying new things as we re-engage, and that's what we're talking about, connection. So we'll go into that. If you want to catch up, see more about the work we've done, go to culturefirst.com. You'll see Working Through It at the top. You can see each of our series and all of those resources. Also, culturefirst.com is our page for community. So this is part of a bigger community initiative of how do we engage our community beyond just tools, but also with messages and voices and information that's supporting a better world of work. So please go to culturefirst.com. And if you want to get more engaged, you can learn more about our community and also either start or get involved in a chapter in your local community that we're really excited about. So with that, I want to get started. I want to go around and kind of welcome each of you individually, say hi, and have you share back. I will share with the audience that yesterday I shared with each of you a question around connection and thinking about a story. I know there's many, but thinking about a story of connection in your professional life that really inspired you. So I'm going to go and say hi to each of you, and then we'll ask you to share a little bit about your background and how that resonates. I'll start with Amanda. Amanda, thank you. Amanda is one of my newer but very close friends, and I think Amanda and my relationship really speaks to connection. Amanda reached out to me on LinkedIn probably 4 or 5 months ago. I think we just shared kind of a kindred spirit around possibility, events, connection in general. Amanda, I know that's your background. You'll speak about that. And I'll say that Amanda and I have never met in person, and we've started a series called Culture and Cocktails that we're running. And it's just the shared belief that together we can do more, and how do we leverage each other. It's been a really magical journey working with you. You're an author, you're a CEO and co-founder of an organization. You've done amazing work with Zappos in Las Vegas. So thank you for joining us. Give a quick introduction and share a story about connection and how it's impacted your life.
Yes, well, it's amazing because Karla and Marta, in different aspects of my life, I know both of them, deeply, and spent time with them in downtown Vegas. So I think like this whole entire experience is really formed around connection. And as we were talking about this before, Marta said there's so many opportunities for connection and work. It's hard to choose one. But I really had to kind of go back and ask myself, when I think about my career, what was that moment where I felt like I was doing something right? And it was, I had met this actor, activist, filmmaker. His name's Justin Baldoni, and he was doing a show called My Last Days. And My Last Days is a show all about individuals who are living with terminal illnesses and really kind of asking them what their dreams are and their wishes are and helping them accomplish those dreams. And he had one woman, Claire Wineland, and we were curating a speaker series for a festival called Life is Beautiful, and we curated Justin. And he said, Claire's dream is to speak on a main stage. Can we surprise her as a part of this My Last Days show, not tell her that she's going to be talking, and I will give her my slot. We'll invite her as a guest. And she had only really given one TEDx talk before. She had worked with a coach for that. And Justin, we had a huge audience, about 700 people for Justin, because he was a famous actor. And he showed this clip of Claire, and she's so powerful and dynamic, and everyone was clapping and crying just from the clip. And then he said, and I want to surprise her. She had cystic fibrosis. I want to surprise her by giving her my slot. I might cry, but and she went up there and talked about, it's not about dying, it's about living. And she got a standing ovation, and it was one of the most powerful moments. And it ended up leading to so much for her within her career. And she passed away a little bit ago, but it was just, I had set out to create experiences that inspired people and changed the way people thought about themselves in the world. And in that moment, I knew I had done that. So that connection and being open to what it led to was a huge moment for my career and my life.
Oh, what beautiful. Thank you. I feel like we're going backwards. Real quickly, how would you summarize your work for people that don't know what you do?
Yeah, they're like, that sounds like a really cool job. That sounds amazing.
What do you do?
So my background, I have a master's in curriculum and instruction. I was a teacher. I wrote my thesis all around engagement. And then I went into hospitality and nightlife and applied that in theory of engagement into marketing and into events. And then the intention behind CatalystCreativ, which is the company that I co-founded with Robert and Tony Shea, they're not related, Robert Fowler and Tony Shea, 8 years ago, was the ability to create experiences, understanding what it looked like to engage, understanding what it looked like to inspire, with the intention to build community. So whether that's a digital experience, a physical event, and it started, I don't need to go into the long-winded response, but it started as a part of this $350 million revitalization initiative in downtown Las Vegas, bringing together people who were really from all different worlds and walks of life to give their knowledge and give talks and workshops to a community. And then that ended up forming into a full community design agency, which Karla actually named as Community Design years ago. And to be able to work with other brands and individuals to have that same connection and community within their workplaces, as well as with their customers.
Awesome. Thank you. And when we're thinking about this topic, you came straight to mind, and particularly from all the work you had done with physical connection and the work you had done with me around how do we transfer this? How do we do it virtually now? So it was really amazing. Thank you for joining us. Next is Karla Ballard Williams, founder and CEO of YING, also a partnership lead at Global Village. I was introduced to Karla, or I'm talking to you, Karla, but I'm so grateful Amanda introduced us. And I can say we've had two really solid conversations, and I have to literally pull myself out of those meetings and end those because I get so enthralled. Every time I speak to you, I learn something new. You shift my perspective. I'm so appreciative. I'm so happy I got to meet you. I know that we will be longtime friends. Thank you. And I know what I like also you introduced me to this idea of social capital, and I cannot shake it. It's so amazing. And I know it will come up today. So real quickly, a little bit about you and a story about connection.
Sure. So first of all, thank you. And I'm already excited. Marta, I know we're going to end up being friends at some point in life from all of this. So it's so good to be connected with you guys. So I'm originally from Philadelphia, born and raised. I won't start rapping like Jazzy Jeff in those days. But anyway, I'm Karla. I'm excited to be here. I'm actually, my first professional gig was banking in the financial services industry in the credit card space. So I'm a banker at heart, but also what I like to say, somebody that is super passionate about impact and specifically interested in market-driven strategies for social change, because I think that that's a sustainable strategy to go. But raised here in Philadelphia, my career was in banking, and then I got this moment where I really felt called to start to dive into social impact. Did that and ended up starting one of the largest civil rights organizations affiliate in Delaware, in our first state of Delaware, which is called the Urban League. And it still is called the Urban League, and it's thriving. Went on to become national president of a movement of young professionals in the Urban League space, and then ended up going to Washington, D.C. I spent time in Washington, D.C. working with the United States Chamber of Commerce, and really got a chance to go in the neighborhood, literally in the neighborhood in Anacostia. And we used to meet from the White House to the neighborhood and working with residents so that we could truly understand, as we're working on new solutions and working with essentially the leaders of those neighborhoods, to co-produce solutions together. So that became something I was super fascinated about. Went on to then go to LA and lived in LA, did the Hollywood thing for about 9 years, I would say total. Worked as Senior Vice President at Ogilvy and Mather in the marketing space, helped to implement the Affordable Care Act for the state of California, and worked with over 85 different celebrities, YouTube and traditional. So my experience runs the gamut, you know, going back and forth from social impact, being right on the streets, to working in C-suites. And I absolutely loved it. But one connection that happened that brings me to where we are today is I had the chance walking the streets of 1313 Congress Street in Washington, D.C., Ward 8, one of the hardest hit neighborhoods. I saw this little old white gentleman walking down a very, very, very edgy, I would say, edgy neighborhood that I was working in. And I couldn't understand why he was walking there so freely, because we hadn't seen a lot of people that looked like him there. So I ended up going up to him. I learned he was implementing something called time banking, and all the residents came out. They loved him. They were excited. And essentially that professional connection really inspired what I'm doing today, which I am now co-founder and CEO of an organization called YING. We are a peer-to-peer skill sharing platform that leverages time as a proxy, right, to really calculate the social capital that you have access to. So I always say we're TaskRabbit meets Venmo, we're YING. So I can tell you more, but
the
we'll
first
get
time I met
into
you,
it.
I think you said it's as if Craig, if TaskRabbit and Venmo had a baby, I think is what you said to me.
TaskRabbit and Venmo had a baby. Her name would be Ying.
Oh, thank you. You also have an interesting lineage, so a little interesting fact.
I do. I do.
You are the what, great-great-granddaughter of?
Aaron Burr. So 5th generation. I got to meet all my wonderful white cousins from New England, and that was super fun. Last year, we had a very more public announcement came out with CNN and the Washington Post that through science and DNA matching, it turned out that there was always, there was always sort of the rumblings in the family and my family ever since I was little. But with DNA, we were able to kind of prove it. And it was a powerful moment to have the Burr family and our family just blend so well together. And we're still in contact. We vacation. It's been a beautiful moment.
Awesome. Karla, thank you for saying yes. Thank you for being with us today. My last introduction, Marta. Marta's probably my longest connection here, Marta. And Marta was coming to LinkedIn while I was there. I was leaving, and a friend of mine said, this woman, Marta's coming from Pandora. You must meet her. And I had this moment interaction with Marta, and then I left. And I knew from the first time I met you, Marta, I was like, I will cultivate. It will take time, whatever. And since then, we did start a relationship. Every time I meet with you, I don't know, I'm just very appreciative about our relationship. And I'm really happy that all you've given through Culture Amp and through me, and you're an inspiration. The work you've done is amazing. So thank you for being here. A little bit about you and a connection story. And I know it's hard, but which one stands out for you?
Well, first of all, what introduction. And every time we talk, there's never enough time. That could be a whole currency I need to buy. And Karla, I'm also a former Angelino. I lived there for 9 years. I wonder if we were there at the same time. So
we have to find out
later. Yeah. But I guess a little bit about me, and then I guess I can kind of connect. I thought of a good one. So I am the director of employer brand, employee engagement, and social impact for Instacart, the grocery delivery service. And I've been in this category of work for a while now, almost a decade, before it had fancy titles and things you could search on LinkedIn or people who identified that way. And I've had the good fortune of doing this work for several wonderful companies. And it's the work that gets me up out of bed every morning. I love it. I just love the work that I do. It's the most fulfilling, rewarding work. And I feel very grateful and lucky that I get to practice it. And I'm always learning. And so a story of connection that ties into this conversation I was thinking about was, I, like Amanda, actually had a background in marketing. I had a background in B2B, B2C marketing and event marketing. And I was leading event marketing for Pandora Music, helping to build out all of their live event franchises and how we brought live concerts to consumers. And I was just burnt. I had had a baby. I was traveling every week. I would cry on the road all the time. I was just absolutely miserable. And what I would say is it was someone else's dream job. It wasn't mine. And a friend of mine, actually, when I was in Vegas doing events, said, hey, Zappos has really cool culture, and they have this culture tour. And this is before I even met Amanda and did the Downtown Las Vegas project. And they said, we should go on this culture tour. And so I was like, okay, sure. So I went on this culture tour at Zappos. I was blown away with what they were doing. And there were so many similarities to how Tony operated and how Tim Westergren, the founder of Pandora, operated, and just little things I thought we could do. And I came back to the head of HR. I'd never spoken to him before ever. And I was like, hi, I know we don't know each other, but I just did this really cool thing. And I thought I would just share these things because to me, they're easy to implement. And he was kind of puzzled and said, wow, like, thank you. And then maybe a month later, I got pulled into their office and I was like, oh my God, I'm fired. I don't know what I did, but I'm fired. HR wants to talk to me. And they said, hey, we really need help marketing Pandora Music, the company, and help bringing great people here. And you have really great background in marketing and events. And we really I loved all the ideas you brought forward. Like, would you come on board and I don't know, do like recruit talent marketing? I don't know what we call it, but let's develop it. And I said, yes, that sounds amazing. And so that connection inspired me to make a move, join HR, to where I eventually took on not just what we now call employer brand, but recruitment marketing, employee experience, and social impact. And that's what I've been doing. And so that one connection really gave me a whole career path I didn't even know would exist and be my line of work.
I didn't even know that story.
Really?
I was going to say, that is so awesome, Marta.
I didn't know that was the catalyst. I knew you went to that. I didn't know that put you on this path. That's unbelievable.
And then and whenever I got connected to your thing, however many years later, I was like, yeah, I want to go see that. So,
oh my God, that's so amazing. Wow. That's really cool.
Ripple, like, I mean, I know it feels like, oh my gosh, but the truth is when you hear these stories, you realize you will never know the ripples that we've had. And just, I love that. It's just one of the ripple effects. And Marta, did you say you're at Instacart now? It's just
yes.
I got it. Awesome. Well, thank you all. Okay, so now I'm going to set the stage and we're going to get in this conversation. I mentioned that we've moved through these different stages, and now the theme of this one is experimentation. When I dug into what that means around the change curve, or around how we deal with trauma, it's really about, we've moved through kind of the impact, the denial, and this is when we start to re-engage. All right, so experimentation is really trying new things. It's stepping back into a new world and trying new things. So I think that really fits here. Not that we need to go deep into how do we experiment exactly, but I think in this conversation we're going to talk a lot about trying new things. But to me, it really resonated with, we're re-entering something new, and it's time to start experimenting, trying new things. And I think that's kind of a overarching theme as we speak today. I know that culture amp, as we even define some of our definitions of engagement, we talk about connection. We think it's a critical component to employee engagement is connection. And then I just dug into some of the things we're seeing now that really hit home beyond just as a soft fuzzy thing, but also as tangible, right? We're seeing organizations. Twitter announced recently that's 6,000 employees. A company called Mondelez, 48,000 employees. They own Ritz Crackers. They're kind of a brand company. Have also said they're not returning, or people have an opportunity to choose if they want to go back to work or not. And Jeffries Bank, 5,000 employees. And I picked those three because I thought it was interesting. It's not just tech. We're seeing this so these large companies are signaling, we're not sure what's next, but it's not going to be the exact same way. The Kaiser Family Foundation poll found that 34% of people with jobs are working from home right now. So 34% of people that's a monstrous number. And then the dramatic shift that we're seeing in remote work. There was a 28% lift in remote jobs in March on LinkedIn reports. And what I think is interesting too, and there's somebody here that can really speak to this, is this urban movement. And I've seen it a lot of times, how people are now, I think it's a great example, you're seeing people moving out of urban areas. And it's historic. In other pandemics, we've seen that. This is a trend. So we know that people are moving away. And Amanda, I know when I was reading this information, I was like, you are that story. You were in New York City and you left. So these are we're seeing this, and now it's time to experiment. I mean, the movement is real, the separation is real, but we have to figure out how to reconnect. So to open this up, I really just want to start with defining connection. I don't know if you have to go all the way into defining, but like before we go into the specifics, I want to talk, what is it and why is it so important, right? And just give each of you an opportunity to speak to that. And like, let's kick the conversation off there, and then we'll kick in. And also, audience and people are listening, there's a Q&A button at the bottom. Use it. We'll keep an eye on that. I also got a lot of your questions from your registration that I will be interjecting throughout, and it's going to keep us moving along. So let's kick it off with Karla. Connection.
Sure.
Deeper.
So this is a really important one, because for at least for me and the work that we're doing, it's getting out of the sense of isolation, getting out of the sense that we are not living within a ecosystem where there can be other exchanges that can happen, right, that are of value, even within your immediate family. So connection is, for us, intentionality around getting out of isolation and finding value in those that you can exchange with. And I'll leave that there so the others can speak to it.
Amanda.
Yeah, I have found, and I've really had to think through, I just had a baby, and I was very, very pregnant. It was very difficult for me to move around. Like I went all out eating cacio e pepe every single night. And so I really was isolated actually prior to, the pandemic, by choice. And I'm also immunocompromised. So I really wanted to be safe for me and for my child. And I said no to a lot of things for quite a while. And so then when the pandemic hit, it was just about the time that my son had shots and I was ready to go out into the world again. And then it was like, nope, you are actually going even more inward. And so I really had to look at where I actually got connection from, which was generally consistent relationships and intimate moments with the same people. That's how over the past few years I had built that connection. But that's not historically how I built connection. I really built connection far and wide. And then I just went a little bit more inward during that time of pregnancy. So I had to remember that my community was not just this small world of people that I got to see all the time. My community was far reaching. And I get so much out of connecting other people and being able to kind of weave these webs where I know that, Marta and I haven't spoken in years, but I feel that connection immediately. And to connect Craig and Karla, when you were talking, I feel that connection. And I think even with culture and conscious, it's bringing these people together, these unlikely people, and really just reminding all of us we aren't alone and we can find connection in the most unlikely of places. So it's been unbelievably important for me to remember what that connection feels like and then actually making an effort to make that feeling come to life. It's not as natural or as easy as it might have been before this all went down.
Marta?
Yeah, +1 to both. And then I would just say, in my line of work in particular, my whole job is around fostering connection. It's to help create connection to people who are candidates and may not have ever considered my company. And how do I get in front of them and tell the story of my company so that when they're ready to make a move, they're like, ooh, I know Instacart. I want to come work there. I didn't know that they did this or had this type of culture. Internally with engagement, it's about how do you create, really connection is about creating psychological safety and trust with your colleagues, because that's really the foundation of productivity, right? We trust each other, we know each other outside of work, and so we can have difficult conversations, we can push each other, and we can do good work together. And then the third part of my job around social impact is creating connection to the community. So not just are you living in this walled garden, but are you actually going and interacting and being part of the communities in which we live and work? So that's kind of how I think about connection.
Yeah, I know I've been thinking a lot about this topic too, and I think it's been coming up for me along the way, but more as like the social science of it and realizing there are creatures in this world that don't need to connect, and there are pack animals. And it's clear to me that we are pack animals in a sense. Like I think it's primitive, our need for connection. We see it with the connection between the baby and the mom, the neural reception. Like I just think it's really important for us to not only how it feels, but also it's critical to our existence. And right, what is aside from being executed in the old days, the worst thing you can do is excommunicate somebody, right? Send them away, disconnect them. So I just think it's really important. It's not just a nice to have. It's critical as humans because of our design. And So this next question, while we're still on the like digging in, we'll go one step lower, and that is, this came up from a few people, the key factors in creating human connection. So if we had to dig in a little bit, so what the question was, it was like key factors of human connection that help with intent and authenticity, and that came from Dana Stern and Liana Vargara. If we had to like call out a few like more specifics, what do you think? And I'm gonna open this, so let's see where this goes.
In terms of definition, you're saying? If we wanted to embellish upon that, because I was going to say that sometimes in connection and between being intentional and authentic is that there's a mission that drives the inspiration, right? To even connect in the first place. So if I have a larger communal mission that's in front of me, it's going to force me to realize I can't do this alone. I'm going to have to come out of isolation. I'm going to have to intentionally connect with others that can assist me in the communal mission, right? So I think that there's another layer behind this, which is what motivates individually, an individual beyond themselves to connect with another human being. And what we're seeing now more than ever is that larger mission.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, and Cry, I know we've spoken about this, but this idea of that I always say when you're standing on the sun, you're blind. So we so infrequently know that our gifts are our gifts because they come so naturally to us until someone says, that's actually very difficult for me to do. And then you realize, oh, I just thought everyone was able to do it in this way. So I think by recognizing that unique gift that you have and then really giving that gift freely to be able to solve a specific problem in the world, I think, young people, and I'm like an elder millennial, but young people really think it's all about passion, and it's all about that, it's doing what they love, and that's part of it. It's then, as Karla just said, being a part of something bigger than yourself and using that specific passion, that specific gift to solve a specific problem that you can solve. And you're not going to be able to solve every single problem. So what problem aligns with the gift that you have to offer? And that essentially becomes your purpose. So I think being able to also help people find those gifts is a gift in itself. But this is kind of what this whole conversation is that the people listening, I would hope, would be able to say, I do have something special about me, with whether I have a job or not, and how can I use that to connect with others?
I think if there's anything just sort of different to add, I think a lot of this in virtual connection is meeting people where they are, especially as we're trying to do it in an organizational level. To your point, Craig, like not everyone needs the same amount of social interaction. Some people are like, sweet, I'm good. I like to be uninterrupted. Leave me alone. But you want to give people the opportunity to figure out how they can intersect and jump in. And so a lot of what our experimentation has been in creating, remote connection is offering lots of different types of content and ways for people to foster connection around different interests. I think at the beginning there was a lot of like Zoom happy hours, which get old and are not very inclusive for someone who is sober, for example. So we really had to think about how are you creating different opportunities, and I can hold more of that in a minute if it's relevant, but I think there's just lots of different ways to think about what are the groups you have in your company that already exist, maybe that existed in person, and how can you foster those while we're all virtual.
Yeah, I love it. And I think a couple of things I heard: purpose, or being clear on the why. Like we choose who to be in community with, and getting clear on that. And there's just an opportunity. I think something we thought a lot about when we were building our community was we didn't have to do a lot, but we had to get clear on who was it for and what was it about and what do we stand for. And so again, if you're on this and you want to change and take action in the workplace, check out our communities and be involved. It's a place to do that. Before we move on, real quick, and maybe one or two of you can answer. This is a question that popped for me. I have opinions on it, but I was thinking about this. Is there a difference between good connection and bad connection? Like, do we have to be thinking about how we're connecting? Anybody have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it has to do with boundaries. I think that sometimes we could pull too much identity from the dynamics of our relationships with others. And I have a whole thing around identity and work, and I think it's a real positive. But I think that needs to be a line where you know where you begin and work ends. And it is work-life integration and work-life balance, and we talk a lot about that. But you know, more than ever, it's so unbelievably important in this time to take care of yourself, and to really know what you're feeling and how you can communicate what you need from the people that you work with, who you're spending the majority of your time with, and what you need from your family while you're working, because it's all right now like this. So yeah, that's how I would say.
I was just gonna say, Amanda, I totally, and I don't remember where I read it, somewhere where data is given, that on average, employees are working 3 more hours a day because it's just so hard to turn off, right? I think we are all very guilty of that. So this is a conversation we're talking about a lot. And I couldn't agree more. I think it's about boundary setting right now, absolutely, in this remote world, because it's just too easy to not shut things off.
Yeah. I know when I asked that question, I thought about, I think Brene in her last book on management or leadership, she's hit this, Brene Brown has hit this a couple of times, but being careful of how you're connecting. There's like junk food connection, which is gossip and connecting around negativity. It's not a real connection versus being intentional about connecting in a healthy human way. That's world for me, and something I think about when we're in challenging times. Be careful. It's easy to attract and find people that will be negative with each other, but you're not really feeding your soul in any way.
Can I add something to that, Craig? Sorry.
Yeah.
Just one thing that's really, I think, really interesting, right, is I think most of our companies use Slack or different comms sort of channels. And I think those are such great tools on one hand, because you can connect and get information quickly, but it's really interesting to see when people kind of go in on Slack and have like, there's sort of a rapport building, right? Or like assuming best intent that sometimes goes away on Slack. And I would say now more than ever, it's so important to like pick up the phone. Like, I'm just like, can we all just pick up the fucking phone and like call each other? It's like, I feel like there's things that are appropriate. Sorry, I'm on a soapbox, but like there are things. But there are some things where it's like, just pick up the phone. And one issue I'm finding is like, we don't even have phone numbers in our Atlas channel, like our channel that we use. So, you know, I think it's really like right now, I'm just trying to get people's phone numbers and have in-person.
Marta, I am cracking up over here because we just decided we're not Slacking anymore. We're not Zooming. Well, although we are still technically, so let me take it back. However, we are picking up the phones and calling each other. And it is the coolest thing. You know, I went out to Amazon and got one of those little old school handsets. And now I have a handset because I don't want the cell phone up in my ear too much. I blinged it out. I put diamonds on it. I painted that thing. I said, we are going to be on the phone like back in the day. And it was wonderful because just hearing people's voices, I don't have to see your face. I didn't have to see your face. It's okay. I just want to listen to your sound, right? And for some reason, that, talk about feelings, Amanda, it literally made me feel more connected, you know? And we have millennials and, you know, all sorts of ages. So it was helpful to get back to that good old phone.
I love it. Fun fact, I requested a landline before this even happened, and there was like 2 left in storage, and I was like, I want one. So I want people at my office who has a landline. I love the phone. PSA for the phone. That's all.
I have so much to say, but I'm not going to say because I think it will come up in another question. So I'm going to wait, but I have too much to say about this in a
Marta,
good way.
do you use that plastic thing that holds it to your shoulder?
I know they didn't have any of those.
That's right.
They didn't have any of those, but I do that and remove the earrings.
It's so good. So good.
I love it. Okay, so we'll switch gears. I just wanted to call this out. You may have seen it if you're looking at the chat, but people will watch this video down the road. And Courtney Butler shared. So back to the zoo, but how do we use it? And I thought I was misreading this at first. It said my work team scheduled a GOAT GOAT2 meeting to bring levity to work and disconnect for a moment from all the stress. We were able to get a tour of a rescue organization that rescues farm animals. It was pretty incredible. I just love these creative ideas.
It's awesome.
Thank you for sharing that, Courtney. Okay, so we're about the halfway mark. In the 2 things I want to hit now, and just so everybody knows, is the first one is talking like individually, like cultivating connection. How do we look at it for ourselves? And then we'll move organizationally. And Karla, I want to start with how can we support ourselves around connection? A theme that kept coming up in the questions was social media or technology. Now, Zoom is a bullet point. We could talk about Zoom on its own if you want, or bring that in. But I automatically thought of you, Karla, to kick this off, given that you're building a platform, looking at
Right.
technology, connection. So let's kick that off. Technology, is it helping us, hurting us? What should we be thinking about?
Yeah, I have to give a shout out to Nicole Bradford out where you are up in Menlo Park area. And Nicole has started something called TTA, which is the Transformative Tech, I want to say, Association. I have to go make sure those the name is right. I give her a shout out because I went through a cohort that she hosted that really looked at this question, because tech, as you can see, especially with some of the major social media platforms, have caused us neurological challenges, not just psycho-emotional, but we are addicted now. Some of us are addicted. And that really has caused upticks in suicide amongst young people. I could go on and on, right? With that said, one of the key things that we had intentionality around building was creating a platform that allows for a utility to get done, something that's going to bring you closer to your tribe, your people, as well as just make your relationships more efficient in terms of getting things done. So that was intentional, right? Because tech can be used for good, or tech can be used to, unfortunately, destroy the cultural fabric that we have. So what we did was to build two efforts that are going on parallel to the launch of the platform. We had a group of, I would say, creatives and entrepreneurs that were suffering pretty greatly in Philadelphia. Going through COVID has been very painful because we've been obviously isolated. So what we wanted to do was to create a platform via Zoom, that would bring people together focused on a mission, right? So we are calling this villaging. So we are creating a verb called villaging, building community together. So just right off of that, we wanted to create an energy that allowed for people to have a greater mission to why they would connect. So meaning you could protest, fine, all day. You could, well, I'm not going to promote looting, but people were doing and connecting in different ways. But we created a platform to go from surviving to thriving, an 8-week curriculum in partnership with key leaders of the city of Philadelphia to actually learn how do we work together to build solutions in a really constructive manner, but one where we're also getting mental health. So every time we meet, there's 30 minutes of mental health. That was key because, again, we're connecting through technology, and in technology, it's been kind of warping some of our sense of self-esteem, so on and so forth. So what's been tremendous is that we've started to see individuals saying, I love now seeing you on screen because we are working intentionally with a mission broader than ourselves, focused on the city of Philly, right? And we are looking at taking this to other cities, but focused on Philly and learning because of the breakout. Zoom has breakouts, and it is the loveliest thing because you can go from 90 people on the screen to all of a sudden an intimate 4. And just that, even I call it, what did I call it? We're teleporting, right? That just allowed for people to feel even more connected individually when you go to that intimate circle. So that's how we're using technology in Zoom. Our platform allows for groups, right, to onboard, and we're able then, those groups and those affinities are able to skill share with each other on demand for anything. It could be, I need my garden done, next week, but you're able to use our platform to really create sort of a TaskRabbit on-demand request. You're able to then connect with that individual that you already have trust with, right? And you're tapping into your social capital, right? Those wonderful relationships within your social network. So those are ways that we're using technology to really help to more efficiently go deeper, right, with the connections and bring value to the surface of the connections that you have.
Yeah. Marta, I know our conversation, you spoke a lot too. Thank you, Karla. I'm looking at Marta as well, because we talked a lot about organizational, how you're using technology as a way of connecting. So to stay with this theme of how do we do it a healthy way and leverage technology, some thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we had worked really hard to build up lots of different connection programming. I work cross-functionally with our HR team and workplace team, and our ERGs on how we do Cultural Heritage Month programming or milestones. And we had this awesome playbook, and then we all had to work remotely. So we had to figure out, well, how do we keep this connection? So our workplace team started a program called Virtually Social, which has been really great. And we've been utilizing Zoom a lot for doing our programming. So they, work to curate things like there's people who are yoga, kind of like skill sharing, to your point, Karla, like there are people who are yoga teachers. So they're teaching yoga for free to other employees. They're doing sort of like poker games remotely, things like that. And then we had to figure out, well, how do we celebrate Cultural Heritage Months? Because, we were going into Bring Your Kid to Work Day, to Pride. Bring Your Kid to Work Day, total joke, right? Every day is Bring Your Kid to Work Day if you're a parent. So we worked with the ERG to figure out, well, how do we just sort of create like leverage tools that actually help parents, because it's so difficult right now. So one thing we did was, I was really inspired by the head of HR at, I think it's HP. I early on attended a panel, and she was saying how they had hired teachers just in their network to come and give advice of how to work through homeschooling and care. And so we just, within our network, got a bunch of teachers from all different grades and areas to come in and do a virtual panel and Q&A. And that was incredibly helpful for all of our parents, just to hear tips and hear it's okay if there's screens. Here's other things you might not have considered you could do. We just did a meditation talk. This is all over Zoom, where we had a monk named Jilong Thubten, who is out of the UK, and he is a meditation teacher, and he came in and talked about building a daily mindfulness practice and talked about how you only need 5 minutes and you don't have to be totally silent, and let everybody through that. And then we just did Pride, all virtual, all remote. And so that was interesting, right? Like Pride is something where you're always together in person marching. And so we really did a focus on the intersectionality of the Black, queer, trans community. And we did some things like we had Juanita Moore, who's a local SF drag queen, create a recipe for rainbow carrot hummus, that rainbow carrots is the name of our LGBTQ ERG. And she gave a recipe. We worked with Masterclass to unlock RuPaul's most recent Masterclass on authenticity and presenting your best self.
Which is so good.
It's so good if you haven't seen it. We did a Juneteenth meditation with a Black trans queer meditation teacher. And we sent out, don't underestimate the power of snail mail. I mean, we sent out a bunch of really great, workplace team created these beautiful new t-shirts and bandanas that could be worn as masks. So we've just really been trying to think of, again, different formats and how do you meet people where they are, and how do you use technology, to Karla's point, in a connective way. And so we found that just spicing up what your Zoom content is really helpful. And then just people love swag, letters, anything that's analog, because we don't get it very often. So those would be like my tips that we've learned.
Yeah, I love it. A couple thoughts came to mind. One is, while I was preparing, I read GitHub, something that they've kind of accidentally started, but they're doing is that if there's extra time at the end of a meeting while they're on Zoom, they invite their kids or family members into the Zoom call, and they also get to know each other. But like, that was an interesting, it's just creative, talk about experimenting, trying new things. And I know at Culture Amp, an idea was brought to us that we did for Pride, where every office, we did a lip sync contest. People did videos. We got together per office, and then we did a big one. We brought them all together. And what was so creative is when we did them, we did fundraising. We raised like $10,000 for different charities just internally, and it felt so cool. And it was a real big hit. It started as a side thing. It was a big hit. So that was amazing. I have one more question, and we're gonna, Amanda, we'll keep moving it along, and the next section kicks off with you as well. But before we move on, I thought one came up was interesting from Kristen Strunk, and that was as an introvert. So I think that hits maybe on intersectionality, this idea that there's, let's open this up a bit. Is it different? Anybody here wants to maybe speak to the introvert, or some of these differences of how we are, and maybe just thinking about being careful of how we do things and thinking about everybody.
And you're talking about programming, right, for the introvert?
The question was the effort it takes as an introvert, I think, around connection.
Yeah.
And that was from, Kristen.
Yeah.
So I'll just say that was the question. Let's just see what comes up.
Yeah. Perfect. So one of the things I find myself, even though people might assume I'm this extrovert. I actually love spending time within, and it is the most beautiful opportunity for me to become recharged. So if I think about many of us, a lot of us that might seem like we're, extroverted, a lot of us are introverted. And so for me, connection ideas look like really being able to go even further within, right? And so this is going to be sounding sort of the opposite, but I love listening. There's a new app called Synchronicity that really has helped me kind of get super recharged about how I can reconnect with the world, right? So I'm using meditation sometimes because sometimes I don't feel like coming out and connecting with people. So I use that deeper meditation to go in to kind of see, all right, build up a little bit more confidence to connect with other people. And so a lot of that is also finding people who are like-minded, and being able to be a part of a tribe of people that may not be as comfortable going on screen. And we find some of that within our villaging cohort this time. Some people actually said, I'm so happy I pushed myself to come and be a part of something that's a larger mission. So we also find that that's a great way to pull introverts out, is find that extra mission that can help get someone excited enough to connect and reconnect.
Keep going back to purpose and mission. It's just such a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts on that topic?
I can share a couple. More of just like my experience being an extrovert manager and managing introverts, because I'm very much an extrovert. I've had some really wonderful teams and really wonderful introverts who've shared with me like, hey, like when you do this, it doesn't really make me feel like I can say something. So I've had really great feedback just in my career as a manager. And some things I've just personally learned are little things like sending the agenda ahead of time. Means a lot to people I've worked with who are introverts, because they just want to see what's coming up, because what they've told me is I don't want to speak up unless I feel I have something new or different to add. And so just getting that information ahead of time really helps them formulate thoughts and think about what they can say. Another thing I've learned is to just kind of create an icebreaker question at the top of any meeting. It really helps. And again, sending it ahead of time, because that helps people. Maybe every question isn't relevant, but people will be like, oh, that one, I've got something to say. And then the other thing is, if I don't hear them speaking up in a meeting, I will say, hey, did you have anything else different to add? And usually that kind of helps nudge. So those are just little tips I've learned.
Got it. Okay. We have 12 minutes. Amazing how this flies. Amanda, I'm coming to you now. So we're shifting to organizationally, and thinking now, how do we, when I say organizationally, like interdependence connection. So that was about us as individuals and thinking, and I think we kind of skirted on the two. One of the questions came from Andy Sadowitz, and it was how to measure connection. And I brought this up in my conversation with Amanda, and you're like, oh, I have something to say about that. So Amanda, I'll kick it off with you. Like, how do we measure? This is an interesting one. How do we think about measuring connection in our organizations or just in general?
Yes, I actually haven't even been talking because I'm so excited for this. I was just waiting. So I created a framework. I wrote my thesis on engagement, and I measured what it looked like to measure engagement in a classroom setting. So what it looks like for children's engagement. And then within Catalyst, we call it the internal customer, but this is an actual way to measure engagement, which I define as meaningful connection and attention. So it's not just productivity. And there are 7 distinct levels of engagement. I'm not going to touch upon all of them, but the one I'm most excited about, because Marta just handed it to me, was unsystematic engagement. So I actually can send a Forbes article that just came out, which is breaking down some of the levels and how it pertains to remote work. Because we've been a remote company for 8 years, and we have applied this framework to how do you create a remote culture that is truly engaging, these higher levels of engagement, which are past productivity and are aspirational. So going back to level 2, unsystematic engagement. Unsystematic engagement is it's defined when you're confused by the messaging. So the bottom 3 levels are all around combating these levels in order to get to productivity, which are levels 4 and 5. And literally in the article, in the training, and everything that we say, if it's more than a few Slack messages, if it's more than, let's just say 3 messages, pick up the phone. Because someone is confused by the messaging, and you can actually, these levels, I'm so emotional. So I make everything, I'm so sensitive. These levels can all be out of it. This is really about, I think that was just, I don't know if that was a sound, but that's frustrating engagement level 3.
Sorry, that was me. That was a meeting reminder.
Level 3 is when you want to engage with something, but you're distracted. So there are these specific levels. And what's so incredible, and I do want to touch upon one more. So level 2 on systematic engagement, it's one really important thing to note is as leaders, instead of saying, and this is good for introverts as well, did that make sense? You say, did I explain this clearly? And you give people the opportunity to say, no, you didn't. Because when you say, does that make sense? They feel inferior and they're going to say yes. So level 2, this is just one level. Now I just want to jump to 6, critical engagement, because I think it pertains to all of you on this call. It's when you inspire someone to set goals to make a difference in their career and in their life. That is way higher than 2. So think about all that you need to do to get to that. A lot of companies think they're just going to get to that by having like cool ping pong tables and, you know, a really cool snappy tagline, but it's so much more than that. It is culture, and it takes a lot of time and effort to get to that place. So it really validates all of the work you're all doing. You know, I saw Instacart was sending these physical boxes to employees, and that was inspiring them to be a part of something bigger than themselves, with like the mug and the, you know, the place setting. And it was, they couldn't take tours of the office anymore. And so they were able to connect in that way. And with YING, you know, it's being able to connect with these individuals for this higher, you're a part of something bigger than yourself. And with Culture Amp, it's all around, again, asking people to set goals, share what they feel in order to then build off of those answers to create a culture of goal setting as an organization and as an individual. So, you know, I think for remote training and for remote workplaces, and for, I can talk about that all day, these levels are about every aspect of engagement and of connection. And you could tell I'm obviously obsessed with them because I light up and I'm so excited. But, you know, it's not as simple. It's not binary. It's not disengagement and engagement. It's not, you know, not connected or connected. It's really about meeting people as where they are, as you've both said, and then figuring out what can I do better to help bring this person to a higher level, instead of blaming someone and saying, well, they just don't get it. No. They didn't receive the information. That you're not just talking to talk. Your job as a communicator is to get that person to receive the information that you're communicating. So how can we be better as connectors? So
hey,
yeah,
Amanda, if I wanted to dig into these 7 levels more, could you point me to a great resource or book that would help?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. So I wrote a book called The 7th Level, and we have a whole website, the-7th spelt out level.com. But we have all these free resources, and honestly, I'm so obsessed with this. If anyone were to come to me and just say like, this is a problem I'm having at this level, like just reach out to me, reach out to Craig, he'll put you in touch with me, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I just want to help. And I think that this way of thinking and this framework changes the way that people interact with themselves and each other, because it puts things into perspective in a way that our brains are just not used to. We think that it's so natural and so easy, but it really does, especially now that we're not together all the time. We can't just go in and say, hey, how was your weekend? It takes a lot more effort to have these intentional relationships. So super excited, and thanks for that plug-in.
I see we have 7 minutes. I have one more question I want to ask. Does anybody else want to add any toppers to that on measuring connection?
I'll just say part of what we're doing, you know, with YING is making sure for the first time that we're measuring the connections that happen every single day in the care economy, the core economy. Not necessarily the monetary. Visa does an incredible job, and MasterCard and all of that. But we've built, you know, a similar platform that allows for people to be able to have more efficiencies in how we connect with those that we care most about.
Mm. While we're here on that, where can people go to learn more about YING?
Oh, sure. So go to YING, that's Ying Me, just like you're going to Venmo me, Ying Me, yingme.co for community.
I'm so excited to see this come to life. Okay, so Marta, this final question on the organizational one, and then we'll get into our close. This came up, and I wanted to hit on it. It's important, and I wanted to give voice to this. It came from Jeremy Gluckman, and that is, the questions are on vulnerability and safety in virtual settings, right? So we thought a lot about this in our organizations. We probably thought about it virtually, but now we're doing so much virtual. Any tips or thoughts on how to create safety and create environments people can be a little more vulnerable virtually?
Yeah, I think, you know, definitely, again, like a lot of the work we were doing around cultural heritage months and tapping into ERGs are a big part of creating that safety and making sure that you've got forums and communities that employees can go to and connect with and talk to about issues that, you know, align to their identity, to things they're struggling with, finding those people that look like you, represent you. I think that's really important, especially right now, not just on like the social connection part, but the truly like identity connection piece. But I think another thing is just starting at the top. You know, how do your leaders model that? I think I told you this, Craig, when we were kind of chatting before, but like when we all had to leave the office, we had to do our first remote all hands, and, you know, usually they're very buttoned up. They're not like overly formal, but they're pretty buttoned up and run smoothly. And like our CEO started talking and this fire alarm just started going off in his house. And we're like, oh no. And then you started to watch these Slack channels where people in the dog Slack channel were like, are anyone else's dogs barking? Because they hear the fire alarms, and people were like, my dogs are going crazy. And it became this like really kind of funny and like wonderful connection that, you know, stars are just like us. Like we all have issues, right? People's children just started walking in on calls or these meetings, and people would just be like, this is my son, and pop them on their lap. And I think that part of vulnerability is so important. And that's one of the, I think, positives of us working from home, is it removes this sort of shield of perfection. And we all just have to go with children coming in and out, pets going in and out, things happening. And I think, you know, embracing that is really important.
Yeah. Now, it was 4 minutes. I want to move into the close. One thing I want to add around, I thought a lot about that when I saw that question as well. And what came up for me too was, especially in virtual, is getting really clear on just setting ground rules and agreements. I think, you know, that is when we know where and Amanda, you talked about this, knowing where the boundaries are really helps. We do a lot of that in some of the virtual meetings we've been doing, especially with the culture first community stuff. We're asking people to get vulnerable. We're really clear about setting, you know, what are our ground rules? Is it confidential? Is it not? How do we engage with each other? I think that helps as well. So I wanted to interject that. Okay, so the last piece here is a question that came from Lindsay Barnett, which is, you know, she said, what do you see as being the biggest sustained change in the corporate world? I'll open that up and in our close go around and just, what do you want to see on the other side of this? What do you see coming? What's an aspiration? So, you know, we'll use that to open it up, and I'll just go around. I'll call on each of you again. We'll go back the other way. For me, Karla, we'll start with you. What do you want to see on the other side of this as we push through?
Wow, I want us to see, I definitely want us to begin to measure that time, right? That matters so much, which is really taking into consideration the type of intentionality and energy that we're putting towards creating a healthier society from an environmental standpoint, social justice standpoint, all the isms that we have been pushing under the rug, allowing for us to feel uncomfortable, getting uncomfortable talking about it, because we have a real gap as it relates to our cultural connection with each other and with our history. So I'm looking forward to having all of those open conversations, because I know that will impact our workforce and how we go about having healthier and much more transparent relationships at work.
Thank you, Karla. Marta.
I think, I don't know if it's a change, but it's just a sustainment. Like oftentimes I would get asked, like, do you think employer brand and engagement has a place if people aren't hiring? And I've always answered, like, of course it does, because in crisis, your company needs that even more. And I think this is proving the importance of having people focused on connection and engagement all the time, because if we're not connecting, like we're all talking about, we're not able to be productive and find purpose. So I just hope there's maybe more of a spotlight on the importance of this, not just when you are a company trying to do mass scale hiring.
Amanda.
Yeah. So I think I would love to see organizations continue to remember that it's important they add value to their customers, internal employees, customers, and external customers' lives. It's not just about selling something anymore. Time is our greatest resource. I've learned that since having a 5-month-old. And we need to respect and honor the time of the people that we're talking with and not take it for granted. So I think that's probably a combination of both of you.
Thank you. Well, here we are. The hour always flies. You know, I want to go back. Early on, I asked each of you to talk about connection, and I thought about that myself. And I just really quickly want to say there's a lot of different connections, but I thought about my time at LinkedIn and my manager, Prachi Banga, while I was there. It was probably the healthiest relationship I ever had with a manager. And what I appreciated most was she saw me as an individual, as a person. And warts and all, but she just accepted it. And it was the first time I felt that way with a manager. And it was a real changing point in my career. And I think that was the connection that we just, and sometimes we went head to head, sometimes we had moments, but that was all okay. We saw each other as people and individuals and appreciated each other. And it was the first time I saw that. I didn't feel like a manager saw me as somebody to get something done, but she saw me as a human. And so Prachi, if you're out there, if you hear this, thank you. Also, like I said, thank you, all of you. This is going to be, we'll release next week. It'll be in how we work, or working through it, part 5. You'll see this. As I said, go check that out. Engage with our community at culturefirst.com. And to each of you, you're each very special to me. Thank you for doing this. I know there will be more opportunities with things to come, but for taking this time to share your I don't know what to say other than thank you so much for doing this with us. And I hope that those of you that heard this and listened gain some value and insight out of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Also, I'm going to say, when I end this is one of these things. When I end this, it just cuts everything off. So we're not going to be sitting. So thank you again from me to you. Thank you, Haley, for writing everybody. And I'm going to go ahead and stop now. Stop the recording.
Bye.
Bye.